Good job.
Yesterday morning, this presentation changed when I got up at 4 o'clock and started writing. Forgive me as I read something that I've practiced a few times but didn't get to memorize. A year ago, things were so different. A year ago, I had a clear vision of what 2020 was going to look like. I was already packing up for March trips to Missouri and Wisconsin. I had gigs planned in New Hampshire and Maine and California and New York and Indiana and all over. I was also planning to visit some friends in Colorado and host some friends here in Cincinnati. I had a good idea of what I was going to be doing, where I was going to be going, and what life was going to be like. A year ago, most of us had only worn a mask at Halloween or a costume party, or when the temperature was below 0 or below -10 to my Wisconsin friends. A year ago, many of us didn't realize just how many voices were not being heard in our country. A year ago, I didn't fully appreciate how hard it is and how important it is to say out loud, Black lives matter, and mean it, and believe it, and act like it. A year ago, my mom was alive. So was my Aunt Flossie, and my Aunt Patty, and my friend from college, Colin, and my camp friend, Julie's mom. And as of an hour ago, 527,583 other people here in the US and 2,612,891 around the world. A year ago, we were just beginning to comprehend how fast a virus could spread and how fear and misinformation could spread even faster. A year ago, it looked like restaurants and workplaces and schools might shut down for a few days or a few weeks. Do you remember? And I figured if we were all going to be stuck at home and unable to connect with each other in person for a few weeks, we might need help staying positive. So a year ago today, on March 10th, I started making a list. So a year ago today, on March 10th, I started making a list of things that could fuel our hope. And on March 12th, I sent a sketch to my graphic designer and I asked for help. For those of you who aren't used to my Zoomy Zooms, I use the chat feature, and it's where I put little images that I want you to peek at. And you're welcome to take a peek at the file called Sticker Evolution. By March 14th, we had crystallized the idea of coming together with curious minds and open hearts and calm spirits while we nurtured our health. I believe that focusing on these 4 areas would help us make it all the way to Memorial Day, when we would surely start returning to whatever normal that we had temporarily left behind. Memorial Day 2020. A year ago, I had no idea how many of my friends and my followers would pitch in to help us distribute thousands of We Got This stickers. And it would become a 5-minute COVID coping pep talk and eventually a 1-hour workshop called Ripples of Resilience that you are about to experience. A year ago, I had never, listen to me, a year ago, I had never given an online presentation. I didn't believe I could effectively connect with people and inspire them and engage them unless we were in the room together. I was wrong. A year ago, I wasn't sure I would ever finish a project that I had started a long time ago when some of my friends were feeling helpless. A year ago, no one could have convinced me that this big, unorganized pile that contained 4 years of hopeful research and writing could, in the matter of 8 weeks, turn into something that looks like this. A year ago, most of us didn't know how much the world had already changed. We didn't know how much our lives were about to change. We didn't know how weird and how hard things were about to become. We also didn't know yet just how much uncertainty and discomfort that we could tolerate individually and collectively while still finding ways to keep going, keep growing, and keep glowing. A year ago, I didn't think many of us realized just how precious, how sacred it was to experience the warm smile of a stranger walking by on the street, or a fierce hug from a longtime friend that we hadn't seen in too long. We also didn't know that it is possible to come together in meaningful ways, even if we have to stay physically apart for a whole year. A year ago, it seems like a lifetime ago. And yet here we are. We made it to today. You made it to here. You made it to now. You made it to today. Do me a favor right now and take a deep breath and notice that you are alive. Take another one, and if you know me, you know that I'll want you to think the words here on the inhale and now on the exhale. Take a couple of those. I remembered to breathe. I remembered to record. I'm remembering to enjoy. If you have near hand a single sheet of paper, it might be helpful for you to have that to take a couple notes. Not required, but people have told me that have explored ripples of resilience, it's helpful to have a sheet of paper. And while some of you are hopping up to grab that, that's totally awesome. I want to read to you, and then I won't do any more reading, I swear. I read this because I couldn't memorize it, and I knew I wanted to read you this. Lots of you know about Ripples for Hope, Ripples of Hope. We're going to talk mostly about 2020 and 2021, but some of you don't know that my dear, sweet boyfriend, partner, roommate, whatever, husband, not yet. Don't say that word yet. Spent many months. I just gave his stepmom a heart attack. No, there are no immediate plans. There is no. I saw Susan at the top of my screen. She goes, she's gonna start texting people. They're engaged. No. He spent 3 months in 2019 reading every single one of the over 1,000 ripples that I'd been sending out for 20 years. He put together 52 in a little book called Ripples for Reflection. I found one this morning that I needed to share with you. Most of you all know ripples, 3 things, a pebble, a boulder, and a ponder, 2 quotes, something to think about for the week. Well, ripples number 1030 is called Thriving in the Mess. And I love that he picked this one out. The pebble shared by Leslie and Madison, and I don't know if Leslie's on the call or not. She was, I think, going to be on this call today. One of our very first Ripplers, been submitting quotes for the entire length of time and is still showing up to things like this. It's so awesome. This quote is from Joanna Gaines. I always thought that thriving would come when everything was perfect. And what I learned is that it's actually down in the mess that things get good. The boulder, shared by Brenda in Dallas, Texas, is from actress Kerry Washington, and it says, I don't have to be perfect. All I have to do is show up and enjoy the messy, imperfect, and beautiful journey of my life. It's a trip more wonderful than I ever could have imagined. And then the ponder, that's the part that I write. This one says, today's pebble and boulder are attributed to strong women who have faced adversity and figured out how to embrace life's inevitable difficulties as opportunities for growth. It's fairly common to believe that our best life begins only when we get a grip on all the big stuff we're currently struggling with and solve all the tiny and titanic problems that have bubbled up in our lives. It's a mythical yet tempting concoction of the grass is always greener, the future will be better, and tomorrow me will have everything together so much better than today me does. Relate. Here's the thing. While it might be nice to have, it turns out that we don't absolutely need greener grass or a brighter future or better me in order to thrive. We just need to embrace today's grass, today's opportunities, and today me. Even the toughest days usually have some nuggets of goodness and joy to be savored. And it's more than possible to get stuff done even when our best me isn't available for appearances on a particular day. The bonus treat, anytime today me is able to eke out even a teensy bit of progress, it makes things easier and better for tomorrow me. And I know for certain that today me is deeply appreciative of so many things that several versions of yesterday me accomplished. So join us in thriving amidst whatever messiness exists in life right now. Invite today you to cut yesterday you some slack while tackling a few things to help tomorrow you thrive even more. Work some, play some, and grow some. And then go to bed early enough to rest up so we can do it all with tomorrow you. And I ended with, are you in? Peace, Paul. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover, and I wanted to open with thriving because this workshop ended up being about surviving and reviving and thriving. And I do want to add really quickly another slide for you to look at. And you know, if I can take just a second to take care of something, not a work email, I promise. I've got this open as a draft email that I use to check my links. And usually what happens is I send it to myself and then I can have it up in a really tiny little corner. There we go. And in the draft email, it kept letting me change things. I don't want to be able to change it. It's locked down, Wesselman. So I'm going to be doing this a few times. I'm going to be putting some things in the chat window for you to click on. I promise you, I've got a little Google Doc all set up so that at the end, you don't have to be scraping all these. They'll all be open on your computer, but I'll also send you a file so you can access all of them. This image is called turtles. And when you click it open, you'll see why. There's 3 turtles. And one is surviving, don't die. One is reviving, get better. And one is thriving, kicking butt. And I was talking to my dear friend Toby early on in the time of COVIDia, I call it. And I was getting ready to take this sticker worth of content, curious minds, open hearts, and calm spirits while we nurture our health. And I was thinking about it in terms of if people are in survival mode, they can do this. And if they're in reviving mode, they can do this. And then if they're ready to thrive, they do this. And his comment changed this workshop tremendously. And it's changed all of my content on dealing with changes and challenges because of it. He said, you know, the thing is that some days I can go from feeling like I'm kicking butt to feeling like I'm just barely in survival mode. And in certain areas of my life, I'm sometimes doing one, while in another area, I'm different. And that shaped the content that we're about to sample right now. Because what I decided to talk about, instead of first you survive, then you revive, and then you thrive, is wherever you're at today, wherever you're at right now, for each of these 4 areas, curious minds, open hearts, and calm spirits, while you nurture your health. We've got something that you can do to survive or revive or thrive. And some of you saw a really early version of this presentation, and thanks to your feedback, one of the things I ended up doing is creating this blank slide. So now what we're going to do is show you our work. This is our path for the next about 20 minutes. And what I'm going to do, and what should be up on your screen, is a rectangle, a blue rectangle, and in the middle is my sticker that says, we got this. And then you'll see the 4 areas: curious minds, open hearts, calm spirits while you nurture your health. I just a couple weeks ago added the little legend at the bottom. The S stands for surviving, the green, the yellow R is reviving, and the T is thriving. And so the idea is for each of these areas, we're going to have a survival tip, a revival trip, and a thriving trip. And at the end, I'll have another slide to put up that has all this filled in so that if you don't take notes well or you don't want to take notes, that's okay. What some people have told me is helpful to do is to take your piece of paper and to fold it into quarters so that it matches the handout. And then you can scribble about curious minds, you can scribble about open hearts, and you'll be good to go. Before we dive into the sticker, I haven't asked, how are you? Right now, how are you? On a scale of 1 to 10, before you hopped on this call, what would you say on a scale of 1 to 10 you were feeling? And I'm going to ask you now, some of you already started writing. In just a second, I'm going to invite you to scribble it down, but I want you to write another number too, because in addition to writing down on a piece of paper, how are you? And I'm going to say that right now, I'm going to say I'm at a solid 8. I'm going to say 8.5. The next question is, what's the lowest number that you've been hitting on a regular basis in the last couple months? And then what's the highest number that you've been hitting on a regular basis in the last couple months? And I will show you my numbers, because right now I said I'm at an 8.5. And in parentheses next to it, I wrote 2-8. And I will tell you that even though I'm higher than 8 right now, that's not been the norm at all. I've hit 8 pretty regularly. I've hit 2 pretty regularly, and all the numbers in between. And it would be so useful to me, and I think all the other folks, if you would feel comfortable sharing in the chat, just write the number, and then next to it, write the parentheses. And Angie and Jeff, you can write A and your numbers, and unless you're exactly the same, and then you can write those too. And the reason I love it. She did it. I love it. It's helpful for you to scroll through and take a look at what people are saying. And while you're scrolling through and looking at those, I'm scrolling through and seeing, man, we've got an amazing group of people in this room. Wow. Here's the truth about those numbers. My friend and a consultant who helped me in a great way, Irene, told me early on when I was frustrated that I wasn't hitting 9 and 10 very often. She says, Paul, 8 is the new 10. We are all going through a massive system upgrade. And when your phone needs upgrades to the apps, you can still do other things, but it's slower because some of the processing power is spent on the upgrades. And she helped me adjust my expectation and help me understand that during this massive system upgrade, that when she told me that, we couldn't have known was going to be uploading or downloading for a year, is going to take so much of our processing power that it's going to impact our creativity. It's going to impact our problem solving. It's going to impact our patience. It's going to impact our wellness. It's going to impact our so many areas, from problem solving to creativity, to effectiveness, to time management, and to adjust our level of expectations for ourselves and the other people. And then what we can do is pivot and ask ourselves, let's dive in with curious minds and say, right now, do I need to survive? Or am I ready for some reviving, getting back to normal or creating a new normal? Or am I ready to thrive? If you're at survival and mentally, emotionally, you're just spent, the easy survival mode is to notice what you're thinking right now. Notice, what are you feeling right now? And again, I'm not going to make you share these, but if you've got a scrap piece of paper, jot down some things that you are feeling right now, things that you are thinking right now. And the next question is to expand that just a little bit and saying, are there things you're not feeling or thinking right now, but that have been coming up a lot? What are the things you've been thinking about or feeling a lot lately, even if they aren't on your radar right now? And I'm sorry if writing them actually puts them on your radar and you wish they weren't. Oh, Amy, I love you. That's awesome. Amy wrote flubbity in the comments. And that was, if you know, that was a word that came into my being a few weeks ago that I wrote about in Ripples. Actually, let's take, oh, she wrote it. Oh yeah, she wrote it for everyone. I have this terrible habit of sometimes somebody private messages me and I go, oh, Amy just told me she's working on her taxes and she's cheating on them. No, she What have you, so thank goodness that Amy shared that publicly. What have you been thinking or feeling a lot lately? If a couple of you would feel comfortable sharing that in the chat window so that we can get a sense of what's been going on. Julie wrote, ready to revive, but so tired. All of this takes a lot of energy. Yes. Anxious, tired. Some optimism, some loneliness. Ready for spring, inside out. Yes. Overwhelmed. This screen is going to keep going and you can look over there, but listen to me when I say one of the best things you can do to survive is just to notice. Because one of the great things that is true is when I say to myself, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes we in the English language will say I'm overwhelmed. It's more useful, it's more accurate to say I'm feeling overwhelmed, because the moment you say I am feeling overwhelmed, you're not just a human being who's feeling overwhelmed. You're a person who's aware that you are feeling overwhelmed. And then immediately you are no longer just a person feeling overwhelmed or a person who's aware that they're overwhelmed. You're actually a person who is aware that you are aware that you are overwhelmed. And I'll tell you why that is so precious. Because every time we add a layer of awareness, we are creating a little space between what we're thinking or feeling and how we're going to react or better respond. And there's this great quote that is often attributed to Stephen Covey or to Viktor Frankl. It was actually something that Stephen Covey read somewhere in a library in Hawaii years ago, and we've never been able to find out what book was he reading. He's never been able to identify the source. But what he said, it said, was between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So surviving is just to notice. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. I'm going to talk about noticing and dealing with feelings in next week's Ripples. I worked on it this morning for an hour. How's that for a teaser? After you're surviving, you're aware of what you're thinking and feeling. Then when you're ready to revive, you have a little bit more of a choice about what you're going to focus on. And so if Curious Minds surviving is noticing what you're thinking and feeling, reviving is about saying, I have some choice here, not complete choice. We don't always get to choose what's flashing into our head and what's flashing into our heart. I talk about heart in terms of emotions. We do have a choice about which ones we're going to pay attention to, which ones we're going to focus on. Tina, I'm forgetting your last name. I think it's Tina Anderson. Tina and I had this long conversation that we're going to talk about in Ripples next week Feelings are always valid. Feelings aren't always accurate. And we'll unpack that another time. Right now, what we want to be able to realize is that if we wake up and we're feeling grumpy, first we notice it, then we can choose. Do I want to work on it? Do I want to address it? Do I want to go for a ride, a bike ride or a walk to manage it? Do I want to write a note and put it down and set it for later? I want to choose what I want to focus on. The thriving mode is available to us if we're done surviving and reviving and we're ready to, and that is to be able to pivot to growth. If you don't know the amazing concept about fixed mindset versus growth mindset, this is where this comes into play. If you're not familiar, Google it. There's some great stuff out there. The short version is most people end up falling a little bit towards one of these two. A fixed mindset tends to say, how I am right now, the success I've achieved in my life is based on my talent, how good I am right now. And a growth mindset tends to think how my success in my life, how I am right now, has to do with how hard I've worked, the effort I've put in, and things that I can work on to do differently might improve that. We all think in a fixed mindset sometimes, in a growth mindset sometimes. A lot of us get locked into one or the other. And fixed mindset people that tend to say, I can't improve because I'm only this smart. One of the cool things about a fixed mindset is you can grow out of it. When you're ready, you can add words like, I can't do it yet. I'm not able to do that at this time. When we get a bad grade, it's like, what do I have to do differently next time? How can I choose to grow? Please note, this is a thriving action. This isn't survival. And lots of days you might not feel like, well, let's pivot to growth. That means you're down at, let's just notice, and maybe let's choose what to work on and what to set aside for a while. Make sense? Keep us on track. We got to keep on moving. So we're going to switch over to open hearts. If Curious Minds is a little bit about what's going on in here, open hearts originally, the concept was talking about gratitude and compassion and generosity towards other people. But when I sat down and said, okay, what's the surviving, reviving, and thriving? How do we break this down? I realized we can't show compassion and gratitude and patience and kindness towards anyone else until we can show it to ourselves. So the surviving mechanism here for open hearts is to be able to show, to demonstrate, to practice gratitude, compassion, and generosity to ourselves. When that feels right, then we're ready to revive. We're ready to get back to normal. We're ready to create a new normal by extending it outwards towards the people in our life that it's usually easy, our friends, our loved ones, people we care about, people we trust and respect and have positive regard for. Surviving is about being able to extend gratitude and compassion and generosity to people in the next level and the next level, people who we don't like, people that we hate, people that we don't have trust and respect and positive regard for people that we either think are evil or people who are operating from a place of harm, of evil. And that's thriving. That's not always easy. And sometimes it's not what your job is called to do. So we need to start. And here is where, some of you know this, this is where I thought it was months and months into COVID. It turns out that less than 2 weeks into we're supposed to wash our hand for 20 seconds, I was sick of happy birthday. Because that's what they had told us. Sing happy birthday twice, and then it'll be 20 seconds. And happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. And I'd done that, and I was sick of happy birthday. And I was afraid I was never going to be able to sing happy birthday again. And my buddy Toby and I on a call on March 20th of 2020 had a 3-hour tangent because we said we got to have something better. And we came up with the hand washing meditation. And it has 3 stanzas. It'll take me longer than 20 seconds to unpack this. When you're getting good at it and you memorize it, it's a 20-second meditation. Right now, I'm doing the best I can. Sometimes my best may not seem good enough. But for now, my best is the best I've got. Right now, other people are doing the best they can. Sometimes their best may not seem good enough. For now, their best is the best they've got. Right now, we are all doing the best we can. Sometimes our best may not seem good enough. But for now, our best is the best we've got. Let me share that. Let me share that with you. Again, remember, you don't have to grab all this in the chat, but some people immediately when I do this, they're like, okay, I want that. And I also have a link. My friend Toby is a speaker like myself. He's also a graphic designer, and he put together this little image that looks like a little recipe card, a little note card. And I've heard from so many people that have put this up in their house. I know of a support staff gal in I think an Ohio school district somewhere that put it in all the staff bathrooms, and that lots and lots of educators are remembering this. And it's been so helpful to help me remember that when I'm ready and when I'm available, I can choose to extend gratitude and compassion and generosity to myself first so I can survive. And then to people that it's fairly easy to. And then when I'm ready to thrive, see how far outward I can go. And this isn't about being a good person. This isn't about ignoring evil. And it's not about being just frustrated with how things are and how things should be. It's about knowing that our best chance to improve ourselves, the people around us, and the world is with love. And that's really what these are. I have to do a calm spirits. Deep here now breath. Join me if you'd like, because my computer just let me know we're halfway done already. How did that happen? Luckily, we're halfway around the loop and we're going to be just fine. Calming spirits is not about getting into a twisted, convoluted meditation pose and sitting there for your life. Calm spirit is about being able to find your center as a survival method. And that means taking a deep breath and saying, here now, here now, here now. It might be practicing meditation or mindfulness with an app. My walking buddy, Sophia, is here on the call with us this morning, and we talk about the different things that we use for meditation. She's got a couple online classes. She's got an app she uses. I have an app I use, Calm app, love it. Jeff Warren, the little daily trip apps. Don't tell Jamie, I kind of got a crush on my meditation teacher. It's okay, he's married and got a kid. He's fine. My meditation teacher, not Jamie. Calm might be opening the Bible or a book that is sacred to you and reading a passage. Oh, you know what else calming could be? Shut up. Tangent. It's okay. It's something I was going to share at the end, so I can share it here. Calm might be going to the Ripples Pond. And if you click on it right now, you will see a bunch of rocks. And then when you run your cursor over it, you will see that there's water and you're in a pond. And when you're ready, you can click on the Ripples logo at the top and you will see one of 4,025 quotes that rises up to find you today. And you can say to yourself, this quote, if I believe in God, if I believe in the universe, if I believe in the Ripley coincidence of one of 4,000 quotes, this is the quote I was supposed to get. Mine says, leave the world more interesting for your being here. Neil Gaiman. When you're ready, surviving is, now I want to go back. I don't want to stare at my quote pond. I'll fall in and think about that quote. Surviving is finding your center. Reviving is about noticing that you're off center and returning to your center without judgment, without beating yourself up. And most of us who have done some form of meditation, we think the goal of meditation is to not get distracted. And it takes some people a lifetime of meditation to really get that what the teacher is telling you is the truth. The goal is 1,000 times your mind will wander, and the goal is ever so gently, without judgment, to go, oh, my mind has wandered. Let's come back to my breath, to this quote, to this conversation I'm having with a friend, to this scripture, to this walk in nature. Thriving is not about remaining centered for hours or days or weeks or months. It's about lingering in your center for a little bit longer than you used to, for moments, maybe minutes, not hours. Finding your center, returning to your center, lingering in your center. Around we go to nurturing your health. When I conceived of this little sticker that so many of you helped me distribute, I saw an early draft. I was checking. I wanted to make sure that the dates were accurate and the times were accurate. I literally, this came into being in less than 48 hours. And it originally said optimize health. And what I was thinking, and did you see how on the draft, actually, if you go back a few slides, I noticed this. Where did I put that new tab? Let me just open it again, because that's the easiest thing to do. It said open hearts, curious minds, social distance, clean hands. When I started with this, that's what I thought the messaging was going to be. And I quickly realized, no, we want to make this broad. What's the message I'm trying to get with social distancing and clean hands? And what would have been on there a few days later, because we weren't yet told to wear masks. And it was nurturing your health. And originally the message was everything you can do to nurture your health, to prevent yourself from getting COVID, to minimize the impact if you do get COVID, and then to minimize the impact on the healthcare system, which needs our help. I was convinced I would eventually get COVID because I had been traveling just before. I am around lots of people, and I tend to pick up every bug that every one of my friends' kids have. You know, like I get everything. So for me, it wasn't a matter of really trying to prevent the likelihood I was getting. It was to delay it. And I told myself, the better rested I am, the better shape I'm in, the more chance that I can weather COVID with as little impact as possible. And what this turned into was much more about my health. Overall, all of it. And how I took this when it came time to surviving, reviving, and thriving is to look at my Boy Scout days. I'm an Eagle Scout, and the EMT training that I took when I was in college. And assess and triage is the survival technique. And what we learned, if you fall and hurt yourself in the woods when you're a Boy Scout, the first thing before you move is to triage and say, how am I hurt? What's the worst injury? Tend to that first. If you've got a big scrape on your knee, that's a problem. If your leg is broken, that's a bigger problem. If, as an EMT, I arrive on a scene and there's multiple injuries, quick scan, who is hurt but not life-threatening, and who is in danger if we don't tend to first is going to die. So we assess and we triage, and so again, with internally, it's what's all going on, what's the biggest problem? What is the thing that's the most life-threatening that if I don't tend to this, everything else is irrelevant? And then applying first aid is the reviving. Let's get us back to normal. Let us create a new normal. Let us get back let us get out of a state of illness. And that means physical first aid. It might mean emotional first aid. You know, lots of us have heard about Red Cross's first aid responder training that we train lots and lots of people in physical first aid. I'm new to hearing, just in the last couple of years, it has been so exciting to find out that there is emotional first aid. There is mental health first aid. And there are in schools, in campuses, in workplaces where people are getting certification in mental health first aid as a front line to help people who are struggling. And I would say that reviving, getting people out of illness, physical illness, mental illness, is how we revive when we're ready to thrive. That's when we remember that healthiness is more than just being not sick. There are all these states of wellness, physical wellness, mental wellness, emotional wellness, social wellness, spiritual wellness. If I ask you, are you healthy right now? If you can hear me, if you can breathe, the answer is yes. You are healthy. You have health. Could you be healthier? Sure. Take care of that thing once that heals. Sophia and I were talking this morning about the fact that at I'm over 50 now and stuff happens. And it used to be when I was in my 20s, a couple days later, I couldn't feel that thing. And then I noticed it takes a couple weeks. And Jamie and I decided this morning, I tweaked some, I don't know, ligament, something. And we just marked on the calendar. 2 months from now, I'm probably not going to feel this as much anymore, but it's going to take a couple months. It's going to get there. What can you do when you're ready to thrive with your health? What can you do to maximize your well-being? What needs not just fixing, but really taking it to the next level? Is it time to take a course? Is it time to stretch yourself into your discomfort zone a little bit and take things to the next level? It might be time to survive. But when you choose, it could be time to revive. When you're ready, thriving is available to you. And I'd want you to hear my friend Toby in here saying that there can be one area in these quadrants, even one area of your physical or mental health where you're struggling, where you really need to tend to survival. And then in another area, you're ready to kick butt. You're ready to thrive. Be gentle with yourself when you make these assessments. Be gentle with other people who may look like they're okay. They're not. My friends, it's almost quarter till. My goal was to be right at this point at quarter till. And excuse me, I'm feeling good about that. I usually take so many tangents that I go off and I go, I would love it if you would take about 10 seconds or 15 seconds to stand up and stretch, because I got some cool, fun stuff to share with you. I want to feel better than I do right now. So I'm going to back away from my computer. I'm going to put my microphone in my pocket, and I am going to stretch really big. That felt so good. If you need a comfort break, go pee. I'm going to keep talking, but you're not going to miss too much. We're just going to talk about a whole bunch of fun things right now, and you can catch up when you come back. I want you to feel good and rested. Whew. In fact, why don't I do this to keep us on time? Some people did step away. I'm going to talk about some things that a lot of you know about, because what I wanted to make sure when I got all these fun people together is a whole bunch of things that you might not know about that are already out there. And then I got some surprises to tell that I've been keeping for such a long time. It's been hurting me so much. People, Leah, I'm going to, excuse me. First of all, whoever wrote, you're over 50, shame on you for looking so good. Oh, thank you. People are like icebergs. You only see a small portion showing. There's always so much more under the iceberg. Yes. So good. And somebody wrote up here about, mental health. Kelly said mental health first aid is a fabulous training. That is so cool to know. Kelly, if there's a link you can put to somebody, if so we can learn more, if there's something, otherwise people can Google it, but that's so awesome that you did that. 50 is the new 40. I love that saying, as long as I like, well, that's another workshop. Come back next week. We'll talk about that. Some of you know that every morning I send a text out. And we did this a million years ago, and it was this thing for a long time. No one knew it was actually a backdoor of Twitter that didn't get talked about a lot, that I could set up these tweets and people could get them as text for free. And it was so great until it wasn't. It stopped working. Long story, it broke. We found a way to fix it. It's was kind of expensive at first. So it was just available to the Patreon peeps. We'll explain that. If you don't know what a Patreon peep is, we'll get there. And so I was just gonna make this available to a few people who were pitching in a few bucks to help me with some other stuff earlier this year. And then we found a much cheaper way to do it. And I said, well, now we can have up to 500 people and we've only got 100 peeps. And everyone was like, you have to open this up to everyone. And I go, but this is part of the reward for, and they're like, shut up. We're not doing this for rewards. We're doing this to spread ripples, make it available. So we opened it up. We have 480 people getting them. I just reached out for some feedback. We've raised enough money so we can now have another 500 people get a text every morning. And here's what happens. To follow the instructions, it's free. All it costs you is 30 or 31 texts a month. If you have a limited texting plan, count those 30. You just send the phrase daily splash to the number that I put there. And then you have to confirm your availability. You have to say who you are and what your birth date is. Don't worry, I'm not doing anything with it. And it says, ask where you are too, which is kind of cool. I'll tell you that in a second. And then once you do that, you'll be a daily splasher. Every morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific, these texts go out. They have little mini ponders. They have little, in brackets, a little mini ponder that I write when there's enough space. I'm limited to 140 characters. So there's this little game that I have to play. And sometimes I can just add, wow. And what's really cool is if you like a quote, you can do a tap back. You can hit like or love. And then I find out, Chris Grenfell, if there's a handful of people from my Carbondale days on this call. I don't know if Chris Grenfell is, but anyway, I grew up with Chris and he gets the daily text. And every time when he likes it, I'm like, oh my God, Chris Grenfell liked my text. I'm in 7th grade. Whatever. Where was I going? Daily splashes. Oh yeah, you can also message. You can also say, hey, Paul, that was a good one. And I can't always respond. I don't get immediate notifications, but usually every other day. So I log onto the site and I can chat with people who have liked the quote. Those are free. They're for you. If you want them, go for it. The Ripples Pond, we told you about. Ripples of Hope, you know about. It is a book that exists because of you all. We threw this together in 8 weeks. We created a digital download. It is absolutely free to get as a digital download. I will put the links in the summary email. I want to keep us on time. So if you are a reader and would like, it takes 1 hour to read. A bunch of you all helped me proofread it and put it together. I never thought that this, literally, I started working on this the night after the 2016 election because a lot of my friends were freaking out like, oh, what's going to happen? Sorry, we're not talking about politics. Somebody's like, don't talk about politics. I'm like, I won't, as long as Black Lives Matter isn't talking about politics, because that is about people's lives. Okay, rant over, sorry, love you. But this is, I had been working on this. I gave talks, I wrote tens of thousands of words, and I convinced myself I could never write a book. I had set this down. Ripples for Reflection ended up coming out, and it didn't count as me writing a book because I wrote it gradually over 20 years. That was the story I told myself. And then when the sticker came out, in secret, unbeknownst to you all, I said, I know who needs hope. We all do. Crank that baby out. I'll get you the link if you want a book. If you want to buy a book, for God's sakes, tell me that you were on this call and I'll sign and make a little note on it. We'll get that. I'm not here to sell things, blah, blah, blah. Shut up. This is what I want to tell you. Almost no one knows about this. Almost no one knows about this. This book, Ripples for Reflection, was sitting in a little corner, completely ignored. Jamie and I had written 2020 goal was to figure out how to market a book and sell it. And on March, and we were going to come back from vacation on March 6th. And after I had my 2 gigs in St. Louis and Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation, we were going to sit down and figure out how to market this book. And then COVID happened and said, shut up, you don't know what you're doing. And what we decided to do instead of market it is just talk about it and read it. And the other thing, besides having an audio version of Ripples for Reflection because my friend Toby said to me, I love your book. I wish you were reading it to me. He said that, and that planted, I need to have an audible version of this book. I've tried 3 times to do a podcast, and I've never liked my voice. I've never liked how it comes out. I feel awkward. I don't know what to talk about. And then this happened. As of the last few weeks, unbeknownst to anyone, there has been the Ripples Pondcast. And I have been quietly uploading episodes to iTunes and Audible and Spotify and all the places that you can find a podcast. There is a little every Wednesday since January. There's these little ripples, me reading a thing of ripples. And it's helping me practice learning how to do a podcast. So all of 2021 is done and uploaded. So every Wednesday, you can hear an audio of me reading ripples. And depending on how many people like it, depending on how many people listen to it, we can get together at the end of 2021 and say, should Paul do Ripples of Hope? Should he read that for a few weeks next? Should we start interviews? Should we take Q&A? Who knows? Because by then, instead of me saying, I don't know how to do a podcast, I don't think I can start one, it'll be, what's next? I'm so excited. Oh my God, somebody subscribed. I have a subscriber. So literally, no one knows about this. I'm not even going to ask people to review it or rate it. Just listen, go find it if you can. That would be great. I used this fancy microphone that I'm using here that I learned that I've carried for years on my gigs. I found a cheap adapter so it can work with Zoomy Zooms. So this is how I recorded all of my reading the book. I plugged it into Zoom and then I downloaded the audio file. Well, guess what? It created a video file too. So guess what? I love this. Starting today, you can go to YouTube and you can see me reading Ripples every Wednesday. There is a playlist that is all, and I pushed out this morning, and my cousin Keith just texted me an hour ago and said, shut up, you have a podcast? How did I not know this? Well, YouTube, I published the first 10 so they'd be ready for you this afternoon. And people who subscribe to my YouTube channel all of a sudden were like, what the heck are all these videos? So if you want to watch me read Ripples, it's kind of dorky. It only takes 3 minutes or a Ripple. It works out. Oh, and it has music. I have to say the audio, not the video one, but the audio one has some fun music that we found. And Cindy loves the term Zoomy Zoom, which is cool because that's what I call Zooms. Yes. And so that present I wanted to make available to the world. And the thing that I want to mention very briefly, because I really didn't want this to be commercials, is that at the beginning of COVID, one of the things I wrote down really early on is how am I going to make money, because all of my gigs have been canceled for probably the rest of the year, which turned out to be true, is that I'd heard about this thing, Patreon, where people could support artists, band, podcasts that they liked and pitch in a few bucks and maybe get something in return, maybe get to listen to a recording, da, 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 da. I had set up a page. I had been curious about it, had never done anything with it. April 10th, April 9th, I wrote down on a to-do list of things to figure out is, should I dust that off? And the next Monday, after Ripples came out, a reply to Ripples came in that was from Evan at Patreon. Hi, Paul, my name's Evan. You spoke at my college orientation 10 years ago. I work in customer service at a company called Patreon, and I've always wondered, have you ever heard of it? Because I think you would be a good fit. Shut up, Evan. You're awesome. So I hopped on the call with him, figured out what Patreon was and how to set it up. And pretty soon, a few dozen people, now over 100 people, hang out with me once a month on Zoom calls like this and get a whole bunch of other things, get access to some archives and stuff, and help me. They are, for 2021, Patreon peeps are covering the cost of everything associated with Ripples. They have covered the cost of the website. I spend $250 every month of my own money on MailChimp to send out emails to 30,000 people. And my speaking fees always covered that. Well, now my Patreon peeps do. They also are covering the cost of the daily splashes. And they're covering the cost of something else. My health insurance for 2021 is completely paid for by Patreon peeps. You're awesome. So for those of you on the call who are Patreon peeps, here's the wacky thing I'm going to need your help with. The podcast distribution method I have just announced the week that I decided to do this podcast, a partnership with Acast, so that I can actually publish bonus content just to my Patreon peeps if I want to. Now, my Patreon peeps aren't as much into keeping stuff from other people, so I don't know about that, but I'm intrigued. Do I read each week's ripples? Do I do something? So that is something for us to daydream about. I am very curious. My friends, we are almost out of time. It is very important to me that we end on time, number one, because this is already going to be an hour, and that's a lot. Some of you have other stuff that you have to do. But before, no, you can contribute in lots of ways. I will explain all of that. I will give you guys an email. Before we end, I want to do two things. I want to ask for your help. This is not a donation request. An eval. It would be so helpful for me if you could have a second to, everyone in meeting, fill out an evaluation. Now, I'm going to try to email you this eval afterwards, but what I found is that I don't always end up having everyone's email address. So if you wouldn't mind opening this evaluation so it's on your laptop now, and here's what I promise. If you fill out the eval, that will generate an email to me saying, Marilyn completed an eval. I will reply to all of those people, and I will send you the Google form that has a list of all the links and a couple of other little goodies in there so that everyone who completes the eval will have the follow-up information. If you forget, if you space, all you have to do is track me down, and it's so easy for me to get you the link. But that's the easiest, quickest way to do that. And then the other thing I want to do before we end is for me to read a poem that was written for Ripples in 2014 that was something I read on the day after the election in 2016, and that became the opening of the Ripples of Hope material. And it was written by Nancy Battaglia, who I later learned her full-time work is counseling and helping people who have been impacted by suicide. And she had written this, sometimes we are called upon to be keepers of hope. Hope for a better tomorrow, hope for friends in despair, hope for loved ones at risk, hope for all who dare to dream, hope that they will not stumble alone and in the dark. For all those with whom we connect, the best way we can nurture them is to listen with a heart that is open and to offer hope. Hope that sustains, hope that nourishes, hope that offers comfort and perhaps healing. So hold on to hope today. And if it is too hard for you to do, ask someone, anyone, to hold it for you.